Hey everybody, it's Mr. Marshall here at Stony Lane. I have a video for you that did you know? Did you know about the US presidents? Did you know that some of the best US presidents became the best presidents because they had to deal with something called a crisis? A crisis is a big problem that would be tough for most people to handle. Okay? And so I want to tell you about three presidents that became great because of the way they handled a crisis. Okay? The first one is this guy. You know him, right? That's Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. He served from 1861 to 1865. Abraham Lincoln was the president during a time when the United States was starting to fall apart, right? They were starting to fall apart. In fact, this is what the map of the U.S. looked like, right? All this yellow part, those were places that are states now that weren't states yet because they hadn't gone through the process of creating states there. But all the blue parts were states. In fact, the blue ones were the United States, and these states down here under this red line are what's called the Confederate States. Confederate States were states that believed that slavery should be okay. And so they said, if you aren't going to let us do that, we're going to make our own country. And so Abraham Lincoln said, no, you can't do that. And the presidents before Abraham Lincoln were kind of like, all right, whatever. But like Abraham Lincoln became president, he said, no, you can't do that. We have to stay one country. And so they had a war. It was called the Civil War. And so Abraham Lincoln had a lot of problems. He had a lot of sleepless nights, and lots and lots of people died during the Civil War. It was a really sad time during the history of the United States. Abraham Lincoln had to do some very brave things, and he had to say, nope, you can't do that. And he actually freed the slaves without the permission of the people in the South, and so that got them even angrier. And so Abraham Lincoln did a lot of things as a leader during that time that were hard. But in the end, the United States won the Civil War, and all the states that were the Confederate States down here ended up returning to be part of the United States. And that's important for us today that happened. So Abraham Lincoln was definitely one of those presidents that became a great president of the United States. Here's another one. This is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was the 32nd president of the United States. Franklin Roosevelt served from 1933 to 1945. And you're probably thinking, Mr. Marshall, that's a lot. That's a lot of years. That's 12 years. Franklin Roosevelt is the only president that was ever elected more than twice. In fact, he was elected president 4 times because back then there was no rule that said you can only be president twice. He was elected 4 times, and he didn't. So that would be 16 years, but he died. He was very sick, and he died after 12 years. And so Franklin Roosevelt was president for a long time, and people wanted him to be president for a long time because there were lots of crises going on at the same time. So the first crisis that Roosevelt had to deal with was something called the Great Depression. So these are some pictures of the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a time when there was no money. People had no money in the United States. They didn't have jobs, so they stood in line for food, right? They didn't have jobs. They went to soup kitchens. There were lots of problems that they had because they didn't have money. It was really hard for anyone to get anything because there was no money. And so Franklin Roosevelt made laws that helped people to get jobs and get food and things like that. And just as that was getting solved, something else happened. World War II, that was another crisis. World War II was a war that started in Europe, and then eventually America became involved because it was in Europe and in Asia, actually. And then America became involved because they actually attacked the United States. They attacked a place called Pearl Harbor, which is in Hawaii. And so the United States became attacked. And they became part of World War II as well. And Franklin Roosevelt was the leader of the United States during World War II. And he helped the United States and all the countries that were on the same side as the United States win the war. Okay, so Franklin Roosevelt is remembered as a really successful president. I have one more that I want to tell you about. This is a president named John Kennedy. John Kennedy was the 35th president of the United States. He served from 1961 to 1963. Again, that's like a weird number. That's only 2 years, right? Well, because John Kennedy actually died while he was president, somebody shot him. And so that was very sad. But one of the big crises that John F. Kennedy had to deal with was something called the Cuban Missile Crisis. And the Cuban Missile Crisis was something that happened in 1962. And there was a plan that some other countries were going to attack the United States. And John F. Kennedy stopped them, right? He stopped them during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And you'll learn more about how that happened. But that was something that was really scary for him. He was actually the youngest person to ever be elected president. He was 43 when he became president. And so that's hard. That's hard for someone with a lot of experience, but he didn't have a lot of experience. But he was brave anyway. Okay, so that's it. Those are 3 presidents that became great because they got through a crisis. Okay, so when you have problems in your life, you should think about how brave they were and see if you can be brave as well. Okay, that's it. Did you know? Did you know that presidents can be great because they get through a crisis? Now you know. I'll see you next time.